Hey folks, in this video I'm going to talk about how I got Volkswagen of America to do a recall. This was back in the late 90s. I was an owner of a Volkswagen Corrado VR6, and that car was pretty fun. However, in general, it had a lot of little niggling problems, like the sunroof broke quite often. Also, it had a lot of cooling problems and stuff like that. I remember one time the auxiliary cooling pump, because it had two cooling pumps in it. The auxiliary cooling pump broke and started leaking coolant. It was really hard for an independent, mechanic to fix. Stuff like that. But anyway, one time I was just driving along, and all of a sudden, coolant just started spraying out of my vents and onto my windshield. And it was in the wintertime, and my windshield just got completely fogged up with hot coolant. I got hot coolant all on my feet. My feet were completely soaked with hot coolant. And so it was pretty bad. And I had to pull over on the side of the road and all that. It turned out it was the heater core had bursted. And so I went online, and I can't remember. It might have been a news group at the time or some kind of a listserv, like an email mailing list of VW owners. And I posted on there, and it turns out other people had that same problem, the exact same problem. And one guy even got in an accident because he was on the freeway when it happened, when his heater core sort of blew up, and he was on the freeway, and he kind of veered off to the side of the road and almost got killed and stuff. So as I did some research online and got into it, found out that a lot of people had the exact same issue. People with this model car had the exact same issue. I had complained to Volkswagen of America, and they didn't do anything. They just basically said, we can't help you because your car is out of warranty. And, they were basically, and they said they hadn't heard of any other issues, but they were lying because there were tons of issues. They hadn't heard of any other people with this issue. But, of course, they were lying because there were lots of people with this issue. And also, I complained and, just never got anywhere. Ended up paying to have it fixed, of course, because I needed to have that fixed. The car was not able to be driven because all the coolant had leaked out and all that. So then what happened was I contacted somebody at the NHTSA, the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration. And it turns out that he had a few other complaints with the same problem with this model car as well. So I engaged in a dialogue with him, and also got other people online with the same problem to complain to him as well. And that went on for a while, but he said he was going to start tabulating the complaints and stuff like that. And meanwhile, I threatened Volkswagen of America, saying, I'm getting the government involved here. I'm getting the NHTSA involved here. But they didn't want to hear from me or anything like that. They just their customer service pretty much sucked, and they didn't want to help take care of the problem or anything like that. And certainly they didn't want to pay for my repair or anything. Finally, a couple months go by, and we don't really hear anything about it. And I do get a check in the mail finally from Volkswagen of America, reimbursing me for the repair, for the new heater core and all that. And then also I find out later that they decide to do a recall on this. So that's sort of the power of the internet there for you. What ended up happening was I think they had a lot more complaints than they were leading on. And it really was a safety issue because, if you're driving along on the freeway and your heater core blows, spraying hot coolant into the cabin of your car, that's really a safety issue. I mean, it fogs up your window, you can't see. It can also burn you, because if your vents are open on the bottom, it'll burn your legs and your feet, with hot coolant. And if you're on the freeway, your coolant, or even if you're not on the freeway, the coolant is under pressure, so it kind of shoots out and drains all your coolant onto you, onto your face, onto your body, into the car. So it was a pretty major issue as far as I was concerned. And so I'm really glad that, we got VW to do a recall on that. Not only for the fact that it was a safety issue, but also to get back at VW because they refused to take care of this for us, even though we were out of warranty and stuff. It ended up being what they did when you brought your car in for recall work, is they installed some sort of valve in between somewhere that would, I guess if it bursted, the valve would sort of release the pressure, and so that the coolant would not come into the engine bay, I mean into the cockpit of your car. So it was some kind of valve or something like that they installed. But I'm sure we ended up costing VW millions of dollars on that recall, and so it was a good thing in general, and I was pretty proud of myself on that. But another thing that really turned me off to VW is, at the time, their dealers pretty much sucked. All the VW dealers were absolutely terrible. Now that might have improved nowadays, maybe they're better, but back then they were just really, really bad. I remember one time I brought in my car for service. I think it was at Santa Monica VW, Santa Monica, California, Volkswagen, and or maybe it was called West LA Volkswagen at the time. I don't remember. But when I picked up my car, it turned out that they were painting their building, they were spraying their building, and they got overspray all over my car, and they didn't even tell me or anything. They just I picked up my car. It was kind of dark. It was after work. They just gave me my car. They didn't even want to own up to it. Yet my car had blue paint all over it, just spray paint. Like, they didn't take care to move the cars before painting their building. I mean, it's just absolutely preposterous. So I went back and forth with them a lot, and I ended up having the overspray removed, or getting it removed. Actually, it's fairly easy to do if you know how to use paint cleaning clay on your car. You can do it yourself. But anyway, so I ended up complaining to Volkswagen of America about that as well as the dealership. But it turns out, like, I was talking to one of the service people at that dealership who I was relatively on good terms with, and he said, like, the service managers have quit. A lot of the service managers at the time quit. One guy even had a heart attack because so many people came in, and they were irate, and having to deal with that was very stressful for him. So he had to actually quit because he actually had a heart attack and stuff. So, and that's not the only incident. I had so many different instances of really bad service with Volkswagen dealers at the time in the late 90s. So maybe it's better nowadays, maybe it's not. I don't really know. But that really left a bad taste in my mouth with Volkswagen, completely. So, it was a fun car. I was glad that I had that car when I had it. But like I said, there were a lot of little problems that kept happening with the car. I think the core of the engine was good. The VR6 engine was a really nice engine. But a lot of the ancillary things weren't engineered very well. The electronics weren't very good. A lot of the electronics kept breaking down on that car. Also, the cooling system, as I mentioned, was not good at all. And since that was one of the earlier generations of the VR6s, it tended to run kind of hot and stuff too. I think all that had to do with each other. Maybe now, I think they don't even make the VR6 now, I don't think, anymore. But in subsequent years, they probably got a little bit better. And, they made improvements with all of that, as the years went by. But anyway, I just wanted to do this video sort of telling my story about that. And to this day, I'm pretty turned off by Volkswagens and Audis and stuff, basically because of my experience with the company. Now, things may have changed, I don't know, nowadays, because this was back in the late 90s. But yeah, back then they were just like super, super bad.